Thank all of you for being here tonight. My name's Tammy Proctor. I'm the director of the Greater Topsail Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism. That's a mouthful. The chamber does not endorse. We are impartial. Whoever's elected, we have to work with. So that's why we wanted to have this forum. It's not a debate. And we're doing this in all 4 towns. So, and let me introduce Andy Pettigrew, who is the publisher, editor, owner, delivery boy for the Pender Post. I'd like to thank Surf City as well for allowing us to use the facility tonight, and they are live streaming. Now, for the rules. If you've all seen that commercial where Nick Saban sits down in the VRBO and says, "Here are the rules." Okay, here are the rules. The rules are, this is a forum, not a debate. All questions, all candidates will get all the questions. We're not taking any from the audience for individuals. Every question goes to every candidate. That way, you get to hear what they have to say on the same topic, and you can make your decision. And I ask that you don't applaud until the end, but if you want to show approval, go to the polls. So thank you very much for being here. So we'll get started. We're going to start with you. First question, and then Julian, you'll get the same question. Then the second question, Julian, you'll start, okay? All right. Let me see. We've got so many good questions here. What is your plan when the U.S. federal government doesn't show up to fund, like FEMA and other funding that is in jeopardy?
FEMA in what context?
If we'd have a storm.
Okay. First off, Ms. Proctor, I'd like to thank you and Mr. Pettigrew for hosting and taking the time out of your busy schedule to host this forum. I'd also like to thank all the residents in attendance. It's a big deal. There's a lot of things you could be doing tonight, and you chose to be here. And those that are watching, same. I appreciate your attention. This is one of the reasons why we have a reserve budget, specifically to be able to run our government if we do meet a natural disaster, and not to try to spread fear or anything like that. But within the last week, we were staring at a storm. It could have just as easily turned left as it turned right. Luckily, it turned right. The last storm we had back in Florence, we spent, I think, roughly it's either $11 or $14 million. We were able to recoup back $1 million. We were able to recoup back from the federal government $9 million. Our current reserve budget, I think, is around $14 million, and we're trying to increase that based on a percentage of what we have. So, I didn't really have anything to do with that early on. This was past leadership that's had the foresight to put this together. We were able to reap those benefits. So if we were struck with a storm and the federal government decided not to kick in, we are in a stable position financially that we could manage ourselves. Thank you.
Okay.
I would agree with you in that in looking through the budget, I see that there is ample funds for emergency management. So we wouldn't have to do without, so to speak. I would hope the federal government would do what they did the last time, but if they don't, we're okay.
So I would find it very unusual if the federal government didn't stand up for its citizens. With regard to reserves, we don't have a reserve policy, and that's a concern for me. We don't have a funding line for reserves. We simply take the revenued and underspent budgets and trickle that in. Without a policy, we don't know how it will be spent. So the fact that we have a reserve account is a good thing. The fact that we don't have a policy on how it's governed is a bad thing.
I just want to say thanks for doing this also. We really appreciate it. I know you and Andy worked really hard on this. It's kind of hard when you get the last question because then, of course, you have to almost say, well, I agree with them. I do want to say one thing that Councilman Kennedy said was a great point. You know, one of the things we talk about is as we try to run our town, we run our town like we run our home. And everybody knows how important it is to have a savings account at your home. And what happens if you have no savings account, something happens, there's a lot of tragedy. So, for example, one of the things when we did was when we paid that $9 million out or $10 million out, it took us over 3 years to get that money back. If we would not have had those reserve funds, what would we have done at that point in time? So having those reserve funds are super important. And that because, and it's the relationships that we have, our leadership such as Mayor Batts, Mayor Medlin, Mayor Guy, all built these relationships, okay, and they were able to get to the federal level with our congressmen, our senators, to be able to make sure there's action. Now, I will disagree just a bit with Mr. Plow. Sometimes the federal government doesn't deliver. Let's be honest with you. Sometimes the state government doesn't deliver. Sometimes our county government doesn't deliver. That's why we as a municipality are responsible for our own actions, and that's why having that reserve fund is so critical in keeping our credit rating and everything that we need to make sure we can get for our town. Thanks.
One thing I forgot to do, I jumped right into the questions, and I didn't let you introduce yourselves. I introduced myself. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll start with you, but Jillian, the next question will go to you
Okay.
first.
Thank you again. My name is Hugh Kennedy. I am a resident of Surf City for the past 30 years. My past experience was I was a highway patrolman for the state of North Carolina, and I lived here. I was a local highway patrolman. I worked Pender County. I worked Brunswick, New Hanover, and Onslow counties. My background is I've always been in some sort of service with the patrol, even growing up with my parents, being involved in local community and community actions and volunteering for committees and whatnot. And I've also tried to show that to my son. I have a son that lives here, or was here with us, and he goes to Topsail High School. So not only am I living here, my family's here, I'm also involved with the schools, trying to contribute. I'm going to ask you tonight for your vote on November the 4th. I've also been appointed on the board, so I have experience of being on the board. And I just hope you'll take all this into account. And again, I'm going to ask you for your vote, and I thank you for attendance.
Hi, I'm Jill. I wrote something down because this is all new to me and I'm incredibly nervous and I didn't want to miss anything. So and I'm sure you can relate to that. I am a retired chef and special education professional. I currently work as a freelancer for a global AI company. In addition to my professional background, I have a master's degree in divinity. Also, while I'm relatively new to this town, I've come to love it dearly and I plan to call it my forever home. My motivation for being here is simple. I want to serve the town I love and its residents to the best of my ability. Before coming here tonight, I took time to pray and reflect, and I asked myself this question: why do candidates so often focus on the future rather than commenting on their records or the very current situation we face with these taxes? This made me consider whether the status quo is a good thing. Is there really a desire for change? I think there is, because the people I talk to seem very scared that we're going to become a baby Myrtle Beach, and they don't want that. And that's the direction we're heading if we do not reconsider our leadership. I am confident that I can be part of the part of the solution by advocating for slowing down development, carefully examining development, taking a deep dive into what I and others consider a bloated and wasteful budget, and examining new and existing revenue streams. If elected, I will bring with me a strong moral compass that shapes every decision I make. I am committed to ensuring that the community is actively involved in the decision-making process, that everything is done above board and in broad daylight. So the interests of the community and the city absolutely come first. The principle that actions speak louder than words remains critical for you to remember as you reflect upon your vote in the coming weeks.
Member Cohen? Hi, I'm Andy Plyle, and I've been a part of the island, part of the Surf City environment since I was a teenager. My parents brought us down here for vacation back in the mid-'70s, and we've been coming back ever since. My parents retired in 1994, built a house in Island Oaks, and that was the family home. Everybody came there for vacations, for holidays, whenever we could possibly do that. In 2001, I bought a lot. Why? Because I knew this was going to be where I retired. In 2017, my wife and I and son moved here, and that's exactly what we did. So I've been here as part of that community since the mid-'70s, and it's my forever home. I've lived in 7 different states, in 4 different countries. I've seen a lot of different things, but Surf City has always been my second home. I have an undergraduate degree in pharmacy and a master's and PhD in business and economics. I bring a toolkit to council that doesn't exist at this point in time. I spent the better part of my career in a large Fortune 100 company. My job there was quite simple. Identify the areas where to invest, then quantify that investment in terms of its impact on people, on the health and quality of life of our patients, and then demonstrate that investing in that from the payer perspective, from the insurance companies, is cost effective. It's not much different than what council is asked to do, to spend your money to improve your lives and do it in the most cost effective way they can. And that's what I bring, and I hope you vote for me on the 4th or during early voting. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Sugarts. I'm the current mayor pro tem in Surf City, currently on the council. I'm not a state patrolman. I think Hugh actually did pull me over the first time that I arrived here 15 years ago, I think, okay? But he gave me a warning. I don't have a degree. I never went to college. I've lived here 15 years. With my wife, we have graduated 5 children from Topsail High School, which I'm very proud to say, and we've started several businesses in this community. We've employed a couple hundred people in our community, and we love this community. I was just funny because somebody said to me the other day, what does it take to be a local? And I said, well, I've been here 15 years, and that doesn't even qualify. I mean, I think it takes you probably 45 to 50 years for sure. But I've been very blessed to be on council with 11 different council members in my 8 years and 2 different mayors, and it has been an honor to serve with them. I can say one thing, that my experience in the last 8 years, the knowledge that I've gained from them to be able to keep things in perspective, to make sure we do the right thing, what's best for Surf City, you can never take that away from the experience that you gain from that. And obviously, we are all jockeying for your vote here, and we do appreciate you coming out. And one thing I will say is I do live off on the mainland. I don't live on the island. And one of the things that I want to do is continue to represent people on the island and the mainland. And I'm the only council member currently that sits on the board that is from the mainland. And I would like to continue to represent the mainland and the island together. And I think having a perspective from both is important. So I just want to say thank you for coming tonight. And like I said, you can't replace the leadership that we've had and what we've learned from. It's amazing. So thank you.
You'll each have 2 minutes to answer this next question. Surf City residents' median age is lowering and property taxes are increasing. What are your plans to promote small business and affordable housing? Julian?
Well, I think affordable housing is very important, especially the rental housing, because I know that a great many of the people who work in the city, in the town, on the island and elsewhere, live in the rental housing. So with the new taxes, I fear that that will be passed on to them for rent, and they're going to have a harder time affording to live here, and then we're going to lose our workforce. That's one thing that really bothers me. In terms of, if you want to say catering to a younger crowd, I would want to focus on expanding our green space on the island. I think we could use more green spaces, more picnic areas, parks, maybe little playgrounds, to kind of get families onto the island and feel comfortable that they have a safe place for their children. And as far as the schools go, I think that's where we really have to look at development, because if we develop and we keep putting more housing everywhere, our schools are going to be taxed beyond. They're not going to get that much money to support good education for the kids. So we have to concentrate on that balance of schools, keeping rents reasonable, and making sure that people have places to go, to congregate, and have a wonderful time with their families.
It's an interesting dynamic that's happening in our town, the age disparity. We actually now are seeing what's called a bimodal distribution. We have a large population of older folks, retirees, and a larger number now of young families coming in. Both of these parts of our population, and those of you in between, and there are a few out there, are being squeezed. Their home budgets are being squeezed by higher costs for hurricane insurance, higher costs due to the 30% tax increase. That's unfair to everyone in our community getting that squeeze. As far as affordable housing, housing is a decision that probably goes beyond what the council is actively involved in, other than approving housing. We don't motivate or reinforce affordability in housing absent some initiatives at the county or the state level. There's an opportunity to do that, though I would imagine that the unaffordability of housing for our current residents should be our primary concern as we walk through and try to fix our budget.
Tammy, can you ask the question one more time so I can understand it thoroughly, please?
Surf City residents' median age is dropping, and property taxes are increasing. What are your plans to promote small business and affordable housing?
Well, first of all, as being a small business owner, having several businesses, one of the things in our community is we're very attached with a lot of young people. So my wife and I were sitting talking, we have about 60 16-year-old to 22-year-olds that work for us. So we understand the pulse of that. They think I'm old and inundated when I speak to them, so I have to watch what I say around them because I don't understand their verbiage. And I will say that one of the things is there's a supply and demand thing here also, too. You know, where one side is we don't want to have any housing, no more apartments, no more nothing. But then there's no more, the demand's high, so then the rent is high. So unless you continuously build to meet up with the desire and the demand, that will always be a problem with us. And you know, people don't realize that our council has no right to tell somebody they can't put an apartment complex or a house or a business in, because that's not my job as a council member. My job as a council member is to enforce the rules, the policies, and ordinances. That's what our job is. And if you follow those rules and you own a piece of property, it's something's called by right. You can do those. Like somebody said, why are we putting another oil change in? Well, I don't know, but that's not my decision for that. That's the person that started that business. One thing I want something we talked about is parks. You want to have a place for our children to go. We are one of the very few communities, and Doug Medlin, Mayor Medlin, said to me, we're one of the very few communities on the beach that has the park structure and plan we have. Now, I know Jill mentioned about we need more space for that, green space and stuff. With more parks becomes more money. So there's always the end here, and one of the things that has to happen is tax rates affect everyone, and I think as we move forward and we answer some of these questions, we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to reduce that impact. That I think most people can settle in and understand the concept. But remember this real quick too. A cup of coffee in 2009 was $1.08 at my store. It's now $3. Everything has gone up, and it's not because of taxes. It's because of how things are.
Me?
Yeah.
Median age is lowering. We had some meetings this week talking about that. There's several dynamics that are coming into play. One, I believe, is military. Not that that's a bad thing, but some bases have closed. They've relocated more bases here. Younger people, families. Plus, people want to be here. We have an infrastructure of parks. We have the waterway. We have beaches. People want to raise their families here. Now, affordable housing, once you cross that high-rise bridge, we probably missed that opportunity 50-something years ago. So we need to focus it on the mainland side. But I'm not necessarily generally interested in a lot of high-dense housing on the causeway. To what I apologize, I didn't mean to wave my hand in front of you. Councilman Shugarts mentioned earlier, there is by rights. But what we do have have the ability to control that, and what he was talking about, just to be more specific, is if a piece of property is already zoned to have what's being requested. That is to buy right. We don't have the authority to tell you, you can't do what you want on your land, so it's a balancing act. We have to look at both sides of that coin. What we are able to use as a council is what they call conditional rezoning. If someone comes and says, and this is zoned for R5 or R15 housing development, they want to build a R5 apartment building, we can deny that because it's not zoned for that. Or if they want to come with something different, we can offer up a conditional rezoning where they bring us to plan and we have an opportunity to look at it and decide, does this fit what Surf City wants? Does this fit what our culture is, what our characteristic is? Is it family friendly? Does it have the open spaces? Does it have the sidewalks so the kids can move around on their bicycle, not worried about getting run over with a car? Does it have the multi-use path that creates the interconnectivity that we're looking for? And if it does, and we agree to it, the conditional rezoning, if he decides to sell that, whoever buys it's bound to that plan unless they come before us again and ask for a new plan. That would be my approach.
All right, Andy, the next question will come to you first. We all know that taxes have been an issue, and there's going to be an event explaining the tax situation in Surf City on October 7th. But here's a question regarding taxes. Besides a retreat, which has been controversial, where else do you think you could reduce the budget?
Well, in evaluating the budget and the budget process, I've found something very curious, and that is we tend to underestimate our revenues, and we tend to overestimate our spend, and that's where we get this surplus, and this accumulated surplus over the last 5 or 7 years has taken us up to almost 16 million. And I tried to estimate, based upon the best data that I could get from our finance officer, what our surplus might look like this year, and it's going to be somewhere between $2 and $3 million. So the problem is we write budgets and then look for revenue. We don't look at the revenue first and then design the budgets to meet that. So a 30% tax increase was an easy way out that we didn't have to dig into the budget and do the right thing. My proposal is to give each department head their budget based upon their prior year's spend, and then have them tell us why they need to spend more and on what they're going to spend it, as opposed to trying to find the money to pay for all the things that they want, whether they're priorities or nice to haves or just part of a wish list. That's my strategy.
Well, I first want to, I think we want to get the elephant in the room here about this retreat, if we don't mind talking about this for a moment. First of all, it was training. And so, I don't know if anybody knows a little bit real quick. I just wanted to, so the budget line item for training and travel for our council since 2017, 13,000, 14,000, 11,500, 11,500, 16,800, 14,000, 14,000, 21,900. Those were all budgeted in our budget. Now, no one ever came to me or any of us council members and said to you, why are we spending this money on training? Not once. So this is the first year that it was brought up for us training. And if I was being paid $60,000 a year at doing this job, which I work more than 40 hours a week at, I would be happy to pay for my own training. But I think everybody here agrees with, you can't, that people need educated and they need trained. And for us as elected officials not to get extensive amount of training at the state level, the federal level, the local level, it would be foolish. I want to be trained. I want to make sure that I'm getting, and I would say for sure, being in a room with Mr. Kennedy for 9 hours and eating Jersey Mike's for lunch is not lavish.
It's not retreat either, is it?
It's not a retreat. It's something we're waiting for the pictures of the sitting around the pool with cigars in our, it didn't happen. And we spent the time getting trained. Now, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the training that we did, and I think it's important that we got trained. And we learned a lot from bankers and investment attorneys and School of Government, League of Municipalities, because that's what you hired, that's what you elected us to do, was to become trained so we can make good decisions. I also want to say, too, that I can take anyone's budget here and I can take 25% off of it in about 5 minutes. It's easy to do. You just sit down, go through it real quick. And the last thing is making adjustments to the budget next year when the evaluations come out, making some actual adjustments to that to get that more in line is how we can also correct and make that happen.
Next question, we start with you, Jeremy.
No, I got Hugh.
Oh, I'm
Repeat the
sorry.
question again, that threw me off.
Sorry about that. I'm even keeping score.
I think it was besides the retreat, where else could we reduce budget? Is it me? Every year we analyze the budget. Every year we analyze the rate. We go through it. My big thing that I was saying so much, I'm sure they were getting sick of hearing, but it's a term that everybody uses and other people on the council use it also. Wants and needs, wants and needs. Is this a want or is this a need? One thing Councilman Sugar picked on me one day was I asked, was it mission critical? Is this a mission critical item or is this just something you want to make life easier? And we grind it out, and there are some cuts. And you'll, those of you who are able to attend on the October 7th meeting, you'll see a list of some things that were cut in previous budgets. To what Mr. Plow said, I want to make sure I got this correct. Overestimate spend. Repeat what you said, please, if you're allowed. You said we overestimate spending and we underestimate revenue.
Right.
All right, think about that if this was your house. If you overestimated what you were going to spend and you underestimated your revenue, what you were actually going to bring in, you got a problem. That's going to create, that's going to create you a problem. That's going to create you a problem. We have to overestimate sometimes of the budget because the worst thing we could do would be underestimate what something would cost, because now we've also created a critical problem. We look at these things every year. We try to push them out. The goal this past year was, do we want to maintain our services and what we provide, not we, but what is provided to the town for their quality of life and their lifestyle at the level that we maintain it? And we decided it was yes, and this is what needed to be done. One other thing, and we'll have to dig into it later, we've talked about it in the past. The number just given earlier, about $2.6 million in surplus on the budget, I don't think that's a legitimate number, and we'll just leave it at that. I think there's lapsed salaries involved where there was stuff budgeted for employees that were not used. There were projects that were budgeted for that were not completed. That money didn't disappear, and it does not create it to be new money that can be spent on something else. Thank you.
Well, if I'm elected, I would love to have my training done right here in this room, and I'm happy to eat Jersey Mike's, so no problem there. Looks like a nice classroom to me. But what I would say is that, and I am not a finance person per se, but I am a woman of common sense and reasonableness, and I have looked at this budget with a very fine eye, and I've had people help me look at this budget, and there is stuff going on in that budget that is completely wasted money. And things are being spent on certain services that are not critical, that are just a waste of money. And we could put that money towards more essential services and keep the tax rate low. We don't need to overspend on things like tourism advertising and giving away half our parking revenue to a company that uses 20-year-old technology and things like that. So, and there's lots of those little things in there. So I think if we sit down and we looked at this budget, we could find lots of ways to cut a lot of money and not harm any essential services, not jeopardize anybody's lifestyle, safety. We could do what we wanted to do if we lived reasonably within our means.
All right, Jeremy. How do you feel about cutting the beach nourishment program in half? And what would nature do to the cutting that in half?
Well, I am not for cutting the beach nourishment ever. They've worked too long, our former administrations worked too long on getting this beach nourishment program together. If you really think about this, here we have this, and we go back to taxes. So it's been 15 years since we've had a tax increase for operations. 15 years. The tax rate that was last put in place was for our beach nourishment, which was the 10 cent. That is something that Councilman Canny will tell you can't touch. It goes towards the beach. That is where it goes. And that money that has been provided by taxpayers, all of us, is that 40-some million dollars that we've got in the bank for beach nourishment. So when the general came in and met with the mayor and Councilman Solomon and the staff, and they rode up and down the beach to sign off on this, they wanted to see our money. What did we have put aside for this? And we have that money put aside because of what we've been struggling to do. And so that's not an option. Without this beach, okay, things change in our lives. And it's one of the most important things, there's no doubt about it. So I don't see any way that I would ever want to cut it. I do believe that the 10 cent can go away someday. I think there's some other ways that can fund that, so I think there could be a reduction in that after the beach is nourished, and I'd like to see that possibly happen, and that could drop that tax rate. Thank you.
I'm absolutely for the beach nourishment. If you are for cutting the beach nourishment and doing away with the beach nourishment, I'm not your person. I'm just not. Tourism is the engine that drives Surf City, okay? There's no way around it, and the beach is the fuel that runs that engine. We've been working way too hard for this. More than 25 years we've been working to this goal. We're the closest now we've ever been. Recently this year, the Army Corps of Engineers signed off on the Chiefs report. That was basically a hurdle we've been trying to get over for many years. I just happened to be on the board when it happened. I didn't set this up. I didn't set the 10 set up. I didn't have the foresight and knowledge to put this together. Now we're trying to work for it to go into the planning stage, and once that gets signs off, it'll go out for the bid. This project is going to be the largest beach nurseries project that's been completed on the East Coast. It's 6.5 miles, 6.3 miles long. It's going to cost over $190 million. Our cost share in the front end is going to be $17.5 million. The state's going, or 17.5%. It's going to be roughly $35 million, give or take. The state's going to kick in another 17.5%, and then the federal government will balance that out. Once we get that done, if you've been down to Topsail Beach recently, they have something similar in place. That was not a federal beach nourishment. They've done their own project, but it's going to look very similar. Once that's completed, that's a 50-year plan. Every so often, the federal government's going to come in and they're going to analyze and they're going to assess what needs to be repaired or if anything else needs to be repaired. We still have a cost share in that with the state, but now it goes to 50-50. We'll pay 25%, the state pays 25%, and the federal government will pay the other 50%. This is something that's going to sustain this island and keep it going for the next 50 years. I'll never see the end of the completion of this. Like I said, it needs to be done. Thank you.
I would agree. You can't let the beaches deteriorate. And like I said before, there's ways to do many of these things within the budget that we have. We don't need to raise taxes to do it. Some towns are using a less expensive way to nourish their beaches. I would encourage the town council to look into that heartily, and when you take your bids for people and companies to do the work, that you go with companies that are reliable and reasonable. That's all it needs to be. We don't have to cut anything, and we don't have to lose our beach. We don't want to lose our beach. So we just have to do it, use the noodle. Common sense.
I think Hugh described the beach nourishment program, the financials, in a pretty pragmatic and honest way. The challenge that I have in looking at the numbers is that, are we funding it sufficiently? Are we overfunding it or underfunding it? And in looking at the numbers, we may well be overfunding it. Granted, there need to be contingency plans in the event that cost sharing shifts. That needs to be evaluated. The source of the funding also needs to be evaluated. Mr. Sugarts spoke about the 10 cents, and we'll have to reduce that, or we'll have to maybe look at that or change that. No, we damn right have to change that simply because your assessment is going up. Because 10 cents on your new assessment is going to be the same as 20% on your old assessment. So that will have to be adjusted. It can't remain at 10%. I trust the Army Corps of Engineers have come up with an engineered beach plan that is acceptable and is technically competent. I'm not an expert in beach nourishment. I have to trust someone. I trust them. I think nourishment is important. Resilience of our shoreline is a must-have. The funding needs to be evaluated to ensure that it's being funded fairly and accurately. Thank you.
All right, Hugh, back to you. If elected, do you have some steps that you would take to promote and sustain community input?
Yeah, I think it's based on communication. Obviously, through the reaction of people not being aware, for whatever reason, of our budget conversations earlier on, we failed on that. You didn't know. It was in the newspaper, it was on the website, it was in social media. We got to develop another method of getting that information out to you. In that retreat that we took, one of the things that was brought up, and I think I specifically brought it up because I was aggravated with our website. I know what I'm looking for on our website, and I couldn't find it. It's not intuitive. So it became one of the top 5 things on our strategic plan this year was to update the website in conjunction with the app that was just recently released. And if you don't know about it, the town has an app. You go on, you get you set up an account, and you get information directly sent to your phone. You don't have to check your social media. You don't have to buy. Apologize. You don't have to buy a newspaper, but there are great newspapers in our community that you can access online. I acknowledge the failure there for whatever, this didn't come to light till after, and it was by word of mouth. Well, we're well beyond what the word of mouth of gathering information is. So somewhere there was a disconnect. At the time, I felt like we were getting it out there. I would see this on my sheet. This was going on social media. This is going on Facebook. This is going on the website. This is advertised here. We put a sign out front, but it wasn't enough. My answer is we're in the electronic age. We got to somehow better develop our electronic communications through the website and the app.
Well, I would say one way we could improve communication is to move the town council meetings to when more people can attend. 4:30 on a Tuesday is not when most people can attend. I think if the retreat had been held here, people would know, and people were invited to, participate, they would have shown up. But they're not going to drive 45 minutes to Wilmington and perhaps have to buy a hotel room and meals to figure out what, the council is doing. And they're just not going to do that. I think the council is doing a great job with the social media, and the app is great. I haven't used it for very long, but I think the app is great. But I would also say that we need to be able to talk to people. And one of the things that I have committed to is office hours, where people can meet with me, and hopefully the other council members, when they have free time, they can devote once a month time for talk to people in small groups or one-on-one, where people don't have to make an appointment. They can show up during those hours, just like when you were in college. You had a professor, you had office hours. I think council members should have office hours, and if elected, I will.
Okay, well, I think Mr. Kennedy did a nice job. Yes, we need to increase our social media presence and get information out there before decisions are made. That's absolutely imperative. As far as meeting times are concerned, Council has taken this up as an issue, not made a decision on it. I agree that we need to do it at times that are more convenient to folks that actually work for a living. I'm retired, so I can show up at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. I'm just giving up a round of golf. What's most important, though, is the lack of transparency in the decision process. Not the communication, but rather in how decisions are made. The Friday morning workshop meetings often reach consensus on issues. It could be a small change in a particular ordinance or a large change like funding for personnel. These end up on the consent agenda. The consent agenda is that part of the agenda that's voted and approved by council before the community has an opportunity to comment. So it's a done deal. That, to me, is not right. An individual council member does have the opportunity to remove a consent agenda item and put it on the regular agenda after community comments. That does not happen. Those are the things that I'd look to change. And the one last thing about communication, when you stand up there for your 3 minutes and you tell me you have a problem, and council has to wait till the end of the meeting, an hour and a half later, to answer your question, that's bad communication. I would endorse any council member who has or wants to answer a question during that 3 minutes to be allowed to do so. Thanks.
As Mr. Kennedy pointed out, obviously our communication, we've talked a lot about as far as the website. You know, Hugh was big time on it. This doesn't make sense. We got to get this making sense. But let's just cover about the times of meetings. 8 years ago when I got on council, first thing I wanted to do was change the meeting times. I remember it as clear as day. And Mayor Medlin sat down with me and a couple of council members. They said, look, remember something. People don't come because of the times. They come because of the issues. And he goes, give it some chance. Give it a time. See what happens. And I have to agree with that. Now, I'll go whenever. If it's at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, midnight, I'll be there whenever. The beautiful thing is you can watch every council meeting online nowadays live. That's another great aspect. There is a cost to changing meeting times because our city employees have to stay longer. So there's a cost prohibitive that comes along with that. And I think Kyle's getting us the numbers, but we'll make that decision. Whatever it needs to be, we're good with. It is the age of information. We've got to inform young people. There's not a lot of young people in here today. And young people, not as an insult, okay? But at the end of the day, we've got to inform young people, make them aware of what's going on. One thing, I talk to people, so I don't wait, and to, Jill, to your point there, but I don't wait once a month to talk to people. I'm in people's houses, having coffee, having lunch with people every day. That's my responsibility as a council member, to meet with the community. Many of you I've met that way, and I'm connected with you that way. HOA, town hall meetings. I've done a half a dozen of those in the last, before election season, back in the May, June, July. I went to many HOA meetings, many, and it was awesome to be able to talk with them about the things that were coming up. And, the last thing is you have the ability to comment at workshops. So you can talk at a workshop, and you can voice your opinion at a workshop. So it's just not that quiet of a thing. So anyway, thank you very much.
This question will start with Jill. With your life experience and education, what quality would you bring to the table to help manage the town's budget?
Well, I think the biggest quality that I would bring to the council, to looking at the budget, to considering any further tax increases, trying to get this 30% tax repealed, would be just common sense. I think a lot of times what happens is that people get into office and it might go to their head, or over time their how shall I say this, their moral compass shifts. And I think through my experience with leading large groups of people and working with people in multiple diverse groups, I can say that, pardon me, I could say that reasonableness, common sense, the ability to look at something and see, well, maybe we can do that a different way or less expensively. In my life, I live a frugal life. It doesn't mean I don't do nice things, and it doesn't mean I don't live well, but what it means is I'm very careful with everything I spend money on. And I want it to be good, but I want it to be affordable. So that's the kinds of things I would bring. I'd want to look into, why are we paying this? How much, maybe we could get it for less. Can we save on products, or can we save on services and still get the same quality of service? And those kind of things, that's what I would do.
Well, in my introduction of myself, I shared with you my life experiences working in a large organization with multi-million-dollar budgets and managing those on a day-to-day basis. I was held accountable for those decisions, and when I failed, well, my boss, he let me know. My education, I think, is pretty in line with what is necessary to do good budgeting with a business and economics degree. I think it's something that I've done all my life and something I believe I can do well for and serve the town, and that's my goal.
Well, I don't have any education, so I'm from the School of Hard Knocks. I got my first job when I was 13 years old. I planted pine trees in the heat, and that's what I did. And I learned how to work for myself. My first business was a Subway franchise up in Ohio, and with my twin sister, my family, and that's where I learned about business. When I came down here, I realized when I ran for council the first time 8 years ago, there were 7 people running. Miss Royal was running for city council at that time. I remember that. She's now run for mayor of Holly Ridge, and it was kind of funny because I was the only guy really that was running that was not from the area. And so it was interesting. But I think what people identified was it's okay to have a businessman on council because they understand business. The city is a business. And one of the things that's important to understand is I feel good on making sure that this city is ran efficient and is fiscally responsible, because that's how I run my businesses. And so I think I bring that to the table. I think that's important to do. And I think one of the things that you look at is I've heard some people, say, well, business people shouldn't be on your board. What type of people would you like on your board? You want some people with different experience. For example, Mr. Candy brings a great perspective on things. He's black and white. Okay? So there is no gray area there. And so that sometimes is a great perspective in our city. Understanding of hiring employees, firing employees, having too many employees, not enough employees, keeping the budget where it needs to be, making sure I have spent 60 to 70 hours in a week's period of time or 2 weeks period of time with the mayor and the manager going through this budget line by line by line by line, because that is our responsibility. We leave no stones unturned. And so I think that brings a little bit to it when you have a business person that understands business. So thank you.
Thank you. Life experience. I feel like I bring to the table a work ethic. I spent the summers on the farm with my grandparents, picking butter beans, corn, everything else you had to do on a farm. As I got older, my dad was a plumber. I was 5, 6, 8 years old under houses, bringing wrenches back and forth to my daddy to do his work. As I got older, I became a state trooper for North Carolina. I worked here in this area. I feel like what I bring as far as life experience and education, I do have a college degree. It's in criminal justice. I have a minor in political science. Not that the political science doesn't really help in here. That just gives you an idea of the roles of governments. Through my experience on the highway patrol, decisions I've had to make, I'm not trying to make it bigger than what it is, but there have been situations where I've made decisions that were life or death situations. I feel like what I bring to that is being able to handle pressure to a certain extent that I don't panic. One of the classes, I've told this several times at my meet and greets, one of the classes we took on the highway patrol was a leadership course. And out of that leadership course came about how to approach decision making, and it was reasonable, rational, logical. And I've used that approach for everything. And basically, since then and even now, the theory back then was if you had to make a decision that was going to have impact, you knew it was going to be looked at from high above, you had to be able to justify and explain yourself. And those 3 things is what brings that together. Is the decision I'm about to make reasonable? Is this a reasonable request? Well, if it's not a reasonable request, well, you don't even entertain it. If it is a reasonable request, is it a rational request? Is this decision being made by data and information, or is it being made by emotion? After you cross that bridge, is it logical? If this is a reasonable request and this is the rational approach, is this the logical approach? And if the answer to those 3, and the last thing I've got says, before on the patrol, I didn't necessarily have to make, but I do now, is it ethical? Am I making this decision for myself, or am I making this decision for Surf City? If it's reasonable, rational, logical, and ethical, that's the answer, whether you thought that was going to be the answer before you started or not. Thank you.
This kind of leads into what you were saying. What do you consider a conflict of interest for town employees or council or the mayor? Are there conflicts of interest that you would avoid as a council person?
Who's that to?
Andy, did you start?
Okay. When I was working full-time, we had a conflict of interest situation, and we had a policy around that. And that is, if there's an appearance of conflict, you need to disclose that and then allow we had lawyers that did this for us, to make a determination whether it's real or not. And generally, the rule of thumb was if there's an appearance, then you dissociate or remove yourself from that process. It happens in every environment where you can be making decisions that benefit you, while it also benefits the others, the community, and then there are decisions you make that benefit you that may or may not benefit the community. Whenever that question gets in your head, you need to stand up and say, excuse me, I believe I may have a conflict of interest. Here's the fact pattern, and then allow the attorney to make the decision. A council member cannot abstain from a vote. Unless they have a conflict, and that conflict is approved by the council. So I've rarely heard a conflict of interest statement made by council members. The fact that some of them are realtors and some of them work in small business and decisions can be made that impact that, I think that's something we're going to have to live with. I need to rely on the ethical character of council members, though, to identify themselves as having a conflict and then allowing us to do something.
Our attorney, Brett DeSelm, is probably one of the best governors of that. And how many times have we said, is that a conflict for us? No, not at all. That's why we have a city attorney. That's why we pay him to keep us straight on that. Our town is very unique in the fact that you pretty much can't go anywhere without knowing somebody. And so having a business downtown, I know every business owner downtown. So if a business owner comes to me and says, hey, I don't know, how does this work? And you give them information about how to make that work, go through the proper channels, that's not conflict of interest. That's just knowing everybody around. And it's a unique thing. I know Tony, he owns a trailer bar there. You know everybody. So it is a fine line, but one of the things that we've done a great job on as a council and our prior administrations of making sure that we keep there's that line, not crossing that line. There is something there with the state that we fall into a small city category. Like, if you're in Wilmington, it's a bigger city, so conflict can be different in a larger city than it can a smaller city because it may be defined differently. So one thing I will say is that we pride ourselves as a council, and I pride myself as a council, is making sure that I never once think that it's conflictive, and I know that this council does not do that also. So, thank you.
My understanding of conflict of interest is if a council person financially gains through the town, whether it be directly or a vote that is made that later financially benefits themselves, which is not proper. And there again, we do crutch on the town attorney, Brett DeSelm. He does a great job of that. I've asked him about something off board this week, one of our last meetings. I can't remember if it was a council meeting or a workshop meeting. I brought it up. We were looking at an annex of a piece of property, and I look and I'm like, man, I own a piece of property that touches this piece of property. Is this a conflict of interest for me? Can I vote on this? He says, absolutely, you can vote on it, because are you going to gain anything financially from this process? Like, no, I don't have anything to do with the property other than I have a piece of property that touches it. Okay, you're good, you can vote. We do take that serious. We do look into that quite often, and it is not taken lightly.
Up until recently, almost every job I've ever had has strict policies on conflict of interest. I think one of the things is, of course, like Andy said, where you have to recognize where your conflicts will come in and recognize them and stand up and say, this might be a problem, and seek advice. Town attorney would be a good person to do that. I think also sometimes the conflict of interest isn't so obvious, and we have to take a deep dive into our own consciousness and make sure, especially if I were to own a business in this town, or if I were to gain from, say, someone building some kind of business that competes with mine or whatever that might be. It's not just about getting financial, what do you want to say, payment or something financially coming to you. It's also about not taking votes on things that would enhance, your situation in life in another way. There are other ways that you can avoid conflicts of interest that are more superfluous. You have to be able to own your own conscience and stand up and say, this might not be a good thing for me to vote on because while I might not gain financially, there might be some other rewards down the line, and maybe I should back off. And that's what I would do.
Next question, we start with Jeremy this time. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing Surf City?
I think our sewage and water is our biggest challenge right now. I know spending time with David Price, who's the director of Public Works for us and utilities, that is something we're running at. Our water's great, and we're pumping enough water, but one of the things is we're at max capacity on sewage. And we've been working on high rate infiltration. We've been working on, how we're going to pipe it out to Cape Fear. We've gone through on Wausau, we've gone to Pluris. We're trying to work with all these avenues and angles trying to fix this problem. It's about a $100 million fix. So these are some things that we're going to have to, and that also, to Mr. Candy's point also, it does slow down some growth a little bit because, people have to wait in line for sewage. We just can't give sewage to people. So I think that's our number one biggest issue. Now, I know Mr. Plow's probably going to say the taxes, which is agreed. Make no mistake, that's a big issue. But that issue will get repaired and be adjusted in time, no doubt about it. And so we, one of the things I think that you will do is once you come to October 7th and you see some of the facts, and that's the big thing is, we have to make sure that we get the information from where the information is pure. That's so important nowadays. We want to make sure that we, my children are the greatest example of they think Facebook is real news. We kind of juggle about that, but the internet and Facebook is not always real news. Sometimes you have to be able to go through some of those things yourself and get to the facts. And that's one of the things that I think that are super important as we're navigating, as we're navigating. Do we have to pivot a little bit? Yeah, we're going to pivot a little bit. But at the end of the day, we're going to end up in a good place. So I think sewage and water is our biggest thing that we're going to have to keep working on here.
Today, everybody in this room, it's the taxes. Tax property increase, tax rate increase. I still stand behind my vote based on the information that was presented to the board with the budget and the budget cuts that we had already attempted and the ability to be able to maintain the services and the essential services and maintain a workforce and pay this workforce a living wage, that there was a shortfall in the budget and we met that gap. We knew that the valuation was coming. We always knew that the valuation was coming. I've never had a different point of view than what I'm getting ready to share with you right now. Just tonight might be the first time you've heard it. Once these new valuations are established, I can't speak for the entire board. I can only speak for myself, but I'm confident the entire board is in agreement because we have discussions. That rate will be adjusted. That rate gets looked at every year at the budget. That rate will be adjusted to reflect and or mitigate those new values. On top of that, growth is one of our biggest things, and wastewater. We've just been overwhelmed with a high level of growth over the past, since COVID, since 2020. That was when the boom started. Some of the things we've been able to do to mitigate that is the wastewater matrix. I don't know if you know what the wastewater matrix was, but before, if you got online and you wanted to do something and you got on the wait list, you were in line to get wastewater. There was no incentives for anybody to build here. All we had to do was provide sewer, and they were lining up. That new wastewater matrix has tried to cultivate. Again, I mentioned earlier about Surf City's small town character and family friendly. You get points. You have to earn points now to get on the wastewater, especially for businesses and for developers. You have to get on the wait list, and you have to meet these points to get on the wait list, and it includes things like green space, architecture, what it looks like. Is it what we're looking for? Where is it going to be built? and this kind of thing. So I've run out of time on that, but it is wastewater, it's growth, and it's the taxes is the biggest thing we're facing right now.
Well, the things that I've heard about specifically is the wastewater. People are very worried that if we were to have a huge storm, like last year, a lot of places got really inundated with flooding, and there was a lot of problems with that. I'm not an expert in wastewater. I'd have to really go to school on that. But, you know, if I'm elected, I'm used to going to school, I'll go to school. The other thing that I've heard about over and over again are sidewalks, that in some areas of the town, especially in the mainland, there's not enough sidewalks, and the kids have to ride their bikes in the street or skateboard in the street, and they don't feel very safe. And it's, you know, it's about keeping the kids safe. So I'd want to look at kids' safety. And then, of course, the budget. We got to look at the budget. We got to take a deep dive and see what's really necessary and important for us to maintain our wonderful community, help our businesses, keep our children safe, keep our families safe, have a great atmosphere, beach vibe, I like to call it. And but what can we get rid of? What can we cut down on that doesn't involve that would give us the money to do the things that we need to do with the wastewater and the kids and all that kind of stuff?
So, yeah, everybody's seen my signs, or many of you have seen my signs. Yes, taxes are the big problem for us. And the tax increase was a result of bad budgeting. So the budget is our major challenge, getting it right and doing it right. That needs to be fixed, and I believe I have the tools to help fix that. Fixing it over time? No. Fixing it now. That's what we need. We can't wait. We need to understand and appreciate that these tax increases are unwarranted, and they need to be adjusted as quickly as possible. As far as the challenges of infrastructure, I agree. Our sewer and water systems are stretched. They're at the max, or close to it, according to David Price. The challenge we have is that we have our infrastructure chasing our development, as opposed to having infrastructure that allows development. We need to reverse that process. Let's put the infrastructure in place before we agree to another large development or investment in further commercial growth. Or let's make sure the folks who have paid for the infrastructure have the infrastructure, and that we don't support development that we end up paying for as taxpayers, as opposed to having the developers or those who profit from development pay for that infrastructure growth that's required.
We'll start with you on this question. Will you explain if there is an abundance of cash in the reserve, and explain what the reserve is for?
Are you asking me if I think there is an abundance
Well, this person wants to know if there is an abundance.
in the reserve? Now, I do not think there's an abundance in the reserve. I mentioned it earlier, actually. The reserve budget is it's your rainy day fund, it's your emergency fund, it's what keeps us functioning when other things don't go. To me, this ties in with the FEMA question. Like I said, not trying to alarm anybody, but we're still in hurricane season. Just last week, we had one come up. Everybody was watching the TV. I'm sure you were, because I know I was. All right, is this thing going to hit inside the 5-day window? Is it going to hit inside the 3-day window? Luckily, it turned and it moved on. Again, when we had Florence, I think we spent $14 million. It took us It took us 3 years to get $9 million of that back. That's what this emergency fund is for. This is what it does. This is why it's in place. It could be used for some other simple things, but in the long run and in the big picture, the reason why we have more than other beach towns, I don't know why they don't have more. I know why we have what we have, because this is what we feel we need, and past experience. And the best prediction of the future is what's happened in the past. And we already know what's happened in the past when one of these storms come and we have to interact with the federal government or whatnot. It's vital to have this money on hand so you don't have to borrow the money to do it.
Well, obviously, we have to have money for emergency services and emergencies like hurricanes and things like that that might affect the city. I think one thing that's really important is to know how much you need. Because right now, what I look at is, and what I've been told, is that the general fund is got a lot of extra money in it that could be used for other things, and that we are not really optimizing our revenue streams. So I think we can keep a nice amount in the general fund for, say, a hurricane or whatever we might need that for. But I don't know that we need as much as we have. And I would like to see basically what the decision, how the decision was made to make it as large as it is. And like Hugh said, a lot of towns don't have that much money. They could, if they wanted to. Why does our town need that much money when we're much smaller than some of these larger towns? So I'd like some studies done to kind of give us guidance on what we should have in an emergency fund and what is reasonable, and then fund that, and then take the money that's extra and, use it for other things that, in the budget so we can lower taxes.
So, as part of the budget process, the town generated a document called the Budget Summary. It's available on the website. On page 27 of the budget summary, it has a table. In that table, it says towns with a $10 million or more operating budget should have a 25% reserve fund. In the paragraph directly beneath that, the town manager declares we have 104%. That's 4 times what his table says we should have. Now, I don't agree with the 25% number. I believe that towns like ours in the surrounding area, they run in the 50% range. What they have that's different than us, though, is they have a policy, a written policy that says we will attain a 50% reserve fund for the operating budget. And then they have a line item in their budget that goes to that reserve fund, so it's clear. This is how much we're going to reserve from our revenues this year. We don't have that. That's something that needs to be fixed. When it comes to natural disasters, we do need to have some cash on hand, just like you do when your car breaks down and you need to put in a new radiator or something. It's always useful to have some cash on hand. The one thing, though, is if we have a disaster that's more than $16 million worth of cash on hand, we've got a much bigger problem than not having enough reserve. And the last point I want to make is we have a $127 million positive balance sheet. If we had a critical situation, we could leverage that balance sheet against funding from through a loan or a bond or something like that. If we have to spend $16 million on a natural disaster, we have a bigger problem than a budget would be able to cover. Thank you.
Well, I first want to say that I like to do things based on income, not if-come. So we can never determine how big a storm can be or what damage it can do to us. Now, y'all know, I think we all like to know that we have X amount of money in our own personal savings account. So let's talk about our town. We own City Hall. We own our police department. We own the community center. We own the Welcome Center. We own our parks. We own those. There's no mortgages. There's no payments on those. We have one payment. It's a street sweeper. That should make you proud as a community. That's the type of community you live in, that we are solid. Now, you also get something called a credit rating based on your debt. So let's say we want to go borrow money. We have a 4A credit rating, okay, which is impressive. And most towns, also with the state, I don't know if there's regulation with the state, you have to have X amount in reserves. Mr. Plow was addressing, but you got to go the whole story. So if you fall below a certain percentage, the state can take you over as a city or a town. Okay, and so they can deem you non-effective. So one of the things is we do run over 100%, which is fantastic. So do other towns like Wrightsville Beach. Okay, and one of the things that we want to make sure that is we figured out how to take that money, Mr. Kent, if you remember, and how to invest that money at one of our trainings. Yep, the last one. At our training, retreat training, we learned how to take that money and turn that money into money. Okay? And that was something that we educated and learned ourselves. So that money's just not sitting there idle. It's sitting there, it's collecting interest, it's helping fund our city and keeping our debts and bills low, which I'm super proud of. So, thank you.
All right, we're getting toward the end here. What do you think Surf City's greatest strength is?
You're looking at me.
No, I think it's Jillian's.
Is it my turn? Well, just when I first moved here a couple years ago, I just wandered around the town. I just loved it so much. And I will have to say, I've been into I haven't been into every business in this town, but I've been into quite a few, and I love them all. They're all so hospitable, and they're all so friendly, and the workers are just lovely, and I think that goes into the people of this town just being the greatest asset and the most wonderful people in any town. I've lived in a lot of towns. I think I've lived in 12 towns in my adult life, or cities, and I've never run into a town with as many gracious, loving people as here in Surf City. And I spend my time trying to patronize the town businesses, and some days when I'm not feeling so hot, I'll just start at one end of the island and drive to the other end of the island because it's beautiful. And we get tourists because it's beautiful, and we get tourists because the businesses are friendly and diverse, and there's all kinds of things to do here. And I think the people are our strength.
I don't think anybody can argue with that sentiment. I think the sense of community here is tremendous. Ever since we started coming down here, neighbor helping neighbor, people pitching in together, people enjoying the beach together. That's our greatest asset as a town. The small beach town environment is something that we cherish. It's something that our visitors enjoy. We are not just a town with a beach, as someone so poignantly put it not too long ago. So that's our strength. Our fiscal responsibility will be our strength, because to keep that community environment and to keep us safe and to keep us happy requires fiscal management that addresses the needs, wants, and desires of the community. The community feel can't disappear. We're always going to be Surf City. We're never going to be Myrtle Beach.
So mine is 3 points. One is our town employees, and we have none other. We have the best. Our city manager, if anybody's ever got a chance to speak with our city manager, he's one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. He's overworked and underpaid, and he is resilient, and he's one of the most kindest. And you all agree, anybody's ever met him, he's fantastic. That's number one. I just cannot say enough about our town. The people serve in this town, and they will do what it takes as far as our employees, and they're committed, and it's an amazing concept. Our police department, our chief of police, who's back there tonight, our fire department, our fire chief, our parks director, every one of these guys, fields and grounds, they work their butts off. So that's a strength. A lot of communities don't have that. Number two is our volunteers. Let me tell you something. When I took office 8 years ago, there was 13 people on 3 committees. Today, there's over 82 people on 6 committees. So we have volunteers, people that are serving in our community, and that is exciting to watch how they've worked so hard to make our community better. And the third is, I just want to say how our community pulls together, unlike any other community. For example, the Trevor Dostie thing. Trevor became injured, life-threatening, and a lot of you remember that situation. How awesome it was to see the community come together and help him through that time where we didn't even know he was going to live. So those are some strengths that we have, and it makes me proud every day to be in this position, to be a part of that.
Hey, the common theme is community. That's what the first thing I written down here, greatest strength, community. What used to be our greatest strength is that we were invisible and nobody knew about us, but that no longer exists. All right, that was our greatest superpower, and somehow we lost the power of invisibility. We as a board, and it's growth. The growth is, and that's a hard thing. We as the board, we fight very hard to try to control that growth. It's very difficult to keep things as much as you can as they were, even though you know it can never be the same again, okay? Recently, our land use plan, we went through those ordinances, changed it. This is part of the, where does high-density growth go? Where does the lower-density growth go? How do we try to keep and control this? How do we control traffic, the flow, partnerships with DOT? We're currently working on this year's plan for a strategic plan for on the island in the business district to try to create this interconnectivity with the sidewalks. We're always working toward that. The family, the character, you want, like I said earlier, you want to be able to, your children to move. It's a younger crowd with the older crowd. If you're like me, I'm getting older, but you still like to see the kids riding the bicycles and these John Brown e-bikes, but we'll talk about that on a different day. Going to the skate park, I never thought a skate park would be a thing, but it is. They love it. They're using it all the time. Multi-use path, creating, again, this interconnectivity. That's what we're working toward, trying our best to hold on to what we have, and I think we can do it to a certain extent with it not getting out of control. Thank you.
Well, you all have done so well in keeping time. We didn't have to beat anybody over the head and make you stop. So we're going to give you 3 minutes each to wrap up and summarize why our voters should vote for you. So we will start with Andy.
And it's 3 minutes and the clock's not even up. Wow.
Oh, but this clock's running.
We have a clock watcher. Some of you have seen me participate in some of the council meetings, and 3 minutes originally was very, very difficult. And then I went to writing things down, and I found, no, that's not me. I'm more of a off-the-cuff kind of speaker. So those of you who have gone to some of my or one of my meet and greet events know that even when the microphone dies, I can keep talking. So it's I think the challenge that we face is rooted in the budgeting process that we have. And that is an area where I have some experience and some education. I don't think the council, the mayor, or the town manager have purposely tried to raise your taxes for some nefarious reason. I just think that the budgeting process, when you're looking at $20 million of money, isn't the easiest thing. And you have competing priorities. And prioritizing things is difficult. And trying to understand where the needs and wants are, or what our community prefers, is not an easy task either. My objective would be to reverse the budgeting process. Start with a budget to the various managers and ask them to work toward that budget, and then explain what do we add on top of that you believe is an important or an essential part, and then have council make decisions about what to add to the baseline budget, as opposed to forcing council to go through a budget line by line and strike things out. I think it's important to allow our managers to explain why they need more, as opposed to us trying to figure out how they can get along with less. So if you have an opportunity and come out and vote, and I hope you vote for me. Just as a reminder, my campaign is self-funded. If you feel the need to make a contribution to my campaign, please make the contribution to Share the Table instead. Thanks.
This is somewhat a little bit difficult for me because 8 years ago, when I decided I was going to run for city council, I was unaware of how hateful people can be over doing this. You know, it's funny because my wife, of course, my biggest fan, did not want me to do this. And, you know, I can take a punch, but I'm not a punching bag. You know, somebody calls you a piece of SHIT online, or you're a effing jerk online. I guess you have to deal with that nowadays, even though I think our founding fathers didn't create free speech for that. You know, but when they call your wife a whore online, or your children incest online because you're running for a city council seat, local government in Surf City, you have to evaluate where are we at and what times are we in. You know, I've been on this for 8 years. I bring a lot of experience to the board, a lot of experience. I ain't perfect. I had somebody meet with me last week, said, I want to just talk to you for a minute. I just want to let you know I've heard nothing but bad things about you for the last 4 months, and you haven't said anything. And I'd like to find out for myself why people talk about you. And I said, well, okay. She goes, I just want to state I don't like you. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And he said, but I just need to know. So after a little bit of a conversation, he said, I appreciate this. Just let you know, I still don't like you, but I'm going to vote for you. And so with that, I say that there's certain things in life. You have wisdom, you have hindsight, you have insight, and you have foresight. Now, some of these people run on hindsight. Some people run on foresight, or some people have insight. And you gain insight from wisdom. And wisdom really simply is falling from other people's mistakes. There's been 4 managers I've dealt with, 3 mayors while Xander was going out on the way in, and 14 different council members, numerous staff, numerous elected officials at the state level and at the federal level that we have worked with so diligently to preserve this wonderful city, to make this city the best city it is. I take it personal when Mr. Plow says we didn't budget properly. We budgeted our butts off. We did what was right for you in this town. There was 15 opportunities where budget information went out, and it still wasn't enough, we felt. We could do better at it. And those are the things we want to continue to work at. But we know that where there's a will, there's a way, and there's a way to adjust and make things better. And so I would appreciate your vote. I will make you proud, and I will carry the ball in this town as I have and follow the leaders that have came before me. Thank you.
Real quick, before I get into some of the other stuff I got here, talking about budget and talking about staff. Kyle Brewer is our town manager. Melissa Moore is our finance director. They're top-notch people, and they're top-notch at what they do. And if you're uncertain that that's true, it tells me that you hadn't done your due diligence as far as looking into them, and/or you're listening to somebody else and letting them decide for you. And in my opinion, if that is your thought, you're listening to the wrong person. I will meet with anybody, anytime. I'll talk to you on the phone. My phone number is out there. I will give it to you tonight if you want. 2 quick things. This is going to sound, I don't think the word's callous, but I don't want to take it the wrong way, but as Mr. Sugar said earlier, he kind of took offense to it, and I don't know that it was what she intended, but I've not lost my moral compass since I've been on this board. I've been on this board for 2.5 years. I hold myself to a very high standard in several things: work ethic, accountability, and accessibility. I always have. Those of you that have known me for years, I feel like you would agree with that. If not, let's definitely have a phone conversation. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict what the storms are going to bring. I can't predict what the next year's budget's going to look like right now. I don't know the valuations. I got an idea. I know everyone in this room has an idea. We'll work the best we can to work through that on the backside. As far as this year's budget, again, I've never backed off, and I'm not apologizing. Somebody said if I didn't apologize, then I was, whatever. We worked hard on that budget. The information that was presented to us, I absolutely believe is what needed to be done and how it needed to be done. Things just don't cost what they did in 2019. You got to remember, the valuations that we're going off on tax values right now are 2019 numbers. They're not 25 numbers. When a new house gets built in the last 2 years, it's not tax valued assessed based on what it sold for in 2024. They assess the houses around it that are 2019 values, and they'll assign it a value at that based on that number. So even the new stuff is based on 2019 numbers, not current numbers. But that's coming, obviously, and it's got everybody anxious to understand. The fear of the unknown is a powerful tool. Just try to keep your mind calm. Don't make hasty decisions. When you make hasty decisions in a panic, it's almost always the wrong answer. You have to remain calm. Again, I'm going to ask you for your vote. I feel like I've done a good job. I feel like I've worked hard at what I'm doing, and I will continue to do so. And I will remain accountable. I will try to hold others accountable, and I will definitely be accessible. November the 4th is poll day. I'll see you at the poll. If you want to vote early, I would love it. My name again is Hugh Kennedy. Thank you for your time.
Well, I would ask for your vote because I think the town needs a leadership change. I'm new to this. I bring fresh perspectives. I bring fresh ideas. I would rely on experts if needed to help educate myself to the needs of the town and how to do certain things in a more constructive way. I agree with Andy. I think the budget is mismanaged. I'm sure the council worked very hard on it. They just didn't work very smart on it. So I think we need to bring common sense. We need to advocate for the people of this town. We need to have transparency, obviously, and accountability. And I bring that in spades in my entire life, how I live my life, and my faith. And those things are going to be the things that you can trust if you vote for me. I may not know everything perfectly, but I will, and I'll do it for you. And but I've learned a lot in this progress of going through this campaign, and I've listened to a lot of people, and people are very unhappy. And they're unhappy because they feel like they've been, I don't really know the word for it, maybe tricked, or maybe had the wool pull over their eyes. And I commit to you that I will take everything to the forefront. If I see something, if I hear something, you'll know about it. So I would ask for your vote. My name is Jill Miranda. You'll see my signs. It says I'm dedicated, I'm focused, and I am. Thank you.
All right, we have all gone through our questions, and appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you for the conversation, and we encourage the audience to vote. And in consideration of staff who are working here, if you want to talk with the candidates, do it out in the parking lot so that the staff can wrap up and get ready to go home. So thank you all.
Very good. Now the next one is